Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rebecca. If you haven't seen my face before, I'm a 30-year-old mum here in Australia. I'm on a low-income budget, I'm on Centrelink, and I do videos about finances, motherhood, disability journeys just like this one. So if you like what you see and you want to follow along and you just have any sort of relatability at all, feel free to hit the subscribe button. Join us here in the community. I'd love to have you here. I know I haven't done a video on disability in a while, and I'm sorry, I've just been very focused on my motherhood journey and my financial side of things, but we're back. As you can see in today's video, I'm going to be going through my experience with Meniere's disease. If you don't know my history, I was born extremely premature. I was born at 22 weeks and 2 days gestation. I'm the first youngest baby to ever survive in Australia in 1995, second youngest in the world. I know that that's not the case today, but I am the guinea pig, literally. So from that, with my ears, I've always had hearing issues. I had loads and loads and loads and loads of horrendous ear infections growing up, and because of that I had a lot of glue ear, like really severe glue ear, to the point like it really affected my speech for a very long time. By the way, it's not like the quality of my voice, that wasn't the issue, it's just speech in general. So yeah, from that I had insertion of grommets in and out for many years that fell out, and then a few months later, or about a year later, I'd get them put back in, right up until I was about 14 years old, and then I didn't have any, and my hearing was generally fine. Like I had no infections. Even today, like the last, touch wood, the last ear infection that I remember getting was when I was 16, when I got my tonsils removed. I literally, that same week got my tonsils removed, I got my period, which back then it was really bad. I was just like bedridden, and then I also got a double ear infection in both ears, so it was just hard to swallow, hard to chew. That is the last ear infection I had, or any sort of incident with my ears, up until early 2020. Yeah, I know, the infamous 2020. I started also having issues with my eyesight, so that really had to take like a front step, and also my ear wasn't as prevalent back then as it started to become later on once my eye was sort of settled. So I was dealing with my eye, and then my left ear, I'd started experiencing like loss of hearing, but it would come back. I'd have frequency like loss, and then it would come back, and then I'd have ringing, and like the way I could describe the ringing, I still experience it now. Sometimes I will get a ringing, I would have sudden like pressure, and just like general, just like not being able to hear in that ear, and then it would settle, and then that was it. I still experience that. So over time that started getting more prevalent, and my hearing was less and less able to come back, if that makes sense. So it was just a slow decline of hearing loss, and you know, at this point I hadn't really been seeing an ENT at all, because you know, my hearing was fine up until that point. I really should have been, same with my eyes. I hadn't been seeing an eye doctor. I'm like, I really should be keeping on top of these things because of my history, but you know, I am with them now. However, back then I wasn't seeing anybody, so I just went to a regular audiologist, and they were like, yeah, you've got some hearing loss, we need to send you to, because of a history, we need to send you to a ET specialist. So the first one, I've been to 3. The first one said it's likely due to my prematurity. He didn't do an MRI or anything like that. He just literally looked inside my ear and went, oh, you've got a lot of scarring on your eardrum. Your eardrum looks fine. You do have hearing loss, so I'm just going to put it down to prematurity and like the bone structure of your ear. But if you want more answers, here's another ENT you can go to. I'm like, okay. Because, you know, and I was explaining, like, I had started having, you know, vertigo attacks. My first vertigo attack was actually 2 weeks after I got my bottom wisdom teeth removed, which was already a traumatic experience, and then you throw a vertigo attack that I've never experienced before on top of that. Not a great time for my mental health, let me tell you. With that, I went to another ENT. This ENT doctor was like, okay, we'll do a CT, we'll do an MRI. I got this CT done, and then I had to wait for the MRI until after my daughter was born, because I felt pregnant at that time. And yeah, and then it wasn't until late 2022, I believe, was when I had the MRI, because I'd had the CT already back in 2021, and then I had the MRI in 2022, so it's quite a bit far apart, and I'd still been having like hearing loss and hearing tests and stuff like that. So then came the balance test, because at that point he was like, oh, it's like possibly coming up with 2 different things, but your hearing tests don't correlate with either of those conditions. I'll actually put in what the 2 conditions are that's what the CT scan came back with, like a possible cause or a possibility of either of those two based on the structure and like the flow and everything. I didn't have the cast dye or whatever it is, I didn't have that. It was just what was coming through on the CT, and the MRI kind of reiterated that and confirmed that those two things were a possibility. So because of that, like my ENT was like, well, you know, I can't really guarantee that because your hearing tests, the type of hearing loss you have doesn't correlate with those two conditions, so I'm ruling those out. Okay, so I went for the balance test. I had to do the balance test twice because the first time I got halfway through and I was like, I can't do it anymore, it's too dizzy, it's, you know, I have to get transport home still, it's too much. And the people there, by the way, that I got it done at was so kind, so warming, like so inviting, considering the circumstance. Yeah, they completely understood, and they actually suggested like you can come back another day. And at the time I was like, I really don't want to have to come back, but I think I have to. So I did. I went back second time. The main test that confirmed, I say in quotes confirmed, the diagnosis, only because I was only able to do like 50% of it. So really, he kind of only diagnosed me with Meniere's disease on like somewhat of a 50% chance, I guess. I mean, there obviously is the hearing test and all the other symptoms and stuff. So because of all that, I'm now seeing a new ENT. I haven't seen him yet, but I do have him booked in. He is one of, at least in the Meniere's disease group that I'm in for my country, he is in my area one of the top, like, well-known Meniere's disease, like, ENT doctors. So I'll be seeing him hopefully at some point next year. It's just a lot of money, so bear with me on that. But I am planning not to see him because part of me is like, have I been misdiagnosed? Because, I mean, and again, I don't know if it's just if I'm in like a plateau season or what, but this year alone has been one of the best years yet, touch wood, since being diagnosed. I got officially diagnosed in 2023, and that was also the same month, I think it was the same month, that I started hearing aids. I've been wearing hearing aids just for a couple of years now. They have been really, really helpful, by the way, especially when I have symptoms. I find them really, really useful. I don't have them in at the moment because they're charging. So yeah, I do plan on seeing him. And then, yeah, this has weirdly been one of the best years yet. I mean, I am very much on top of my medication schedule and like reducing my triggers. I found that typically in Meniere's disease, salt is a really big trigger. They tell you, doctors currently tell you, no salt or very low salt diet, exercise, you know, rest, that's it. I found that salt isn't really a trigger for me. Stress is, lack of sleep, like sleep deprivation is. Unfortunately, I have a child that barely sleeps, so that's a struggle. I found that those two are the really big triggers for me, which are often. So, and also I found to like travel and things like that, like transport or like vehicle movements or sudden like wind gusts or something, if I'm at the beach or something, can also be a trigger. So I feel like it's very like environmental things can sometimes trigger me as well. Not all the time though, like this winter, like this whole year so far, touch wood, I think I've had like one attack, or maybe two, but they were both minimal. And I think it's also, I found like exercises to use, especially for my eyes, because I'm legally blind. I already have nystagmus, so when I do have vertigo attacks, it's that times 100. So yeah, it's really just not a fun disease to have. But I have been really, really on top of my medication. For those that are wondering, I take betahistine, the Circ brand, exactly. I'm now taking 4 a day, which I know is a lot, but it has really, really, really helped like minimize and pretty much stabilize my condition at this point in time. Fingers crossed, touch wood. Which is also why I'm seeing the ENT specialist, because I'm like, is this normal? Like, I'm only 5 years into this disease. Like, I don't really know if this is normal for it to like be super, super high. Like, I was having attacks like twice a week, by the way, and completely bedridden for days. And then even after the attack, it usually takes me like 48 to 72 hours to fully like get out of that haze, because when you do have a vertigo attack, it's disorienting, and then after, like once you're kind of out of it, you still are a little bit unbalanced. And also the fog, the brain fog is so bad, and the like disorientedness of like where you are and who you are, it's just so bizarre to experience. and it's not fun. It's really not fun. The nausea, the whooshing of the ear, the fullness that I feel. I do also experience something called pulsatile tinnitus. So to give you a contrast of the person I used to be to the person I am now, just simply because of having this disease, before I got any sort of symptoms, before COVID even, I was studying full time. I would travel on transport over an hour. Well, actually, technically the whole travel day would be like over 2 hours long. I was someone that used to travel all the time, you know, within my like state basically. That was fine. I would get on planes every now and again. Like I would still have anxiety over planes and stuff. I've always kind of been an anxious person, and like there were times I still had a little bit of anxiety being on transport. Nowhere near, like 1,000 times nowhere near as much as it is now. Yeah, so I used to just travel. It was fine. I had no issue till I started getting vertigo attacks, and specifically when I started having attacks on transport. That, like, in my like trauma nervous system is now like a trigger. So I think that's where that vehicle kind of trigger comes from. Sometimes being in a car or on a train or whatever can trigger an attack, because I think it's the stress and anxiety that ends up causing a panic attack that ends up causing a vertigo attack. Doesn't make it's such a cycle, and it's so hard to break because it's so now like ingrained in my nervous system, because it was a traumatic time, let me tell you. From me being who I was back then to now, I have not called transport at all this year. In the last year, I've not called transport at all. I just physically, mentally, emotionally can't. And it's not to say that I never will, because I will, because I'm trying. I'm doing EMDR. Although now, as of today, my therapist has resigned, so I'm now having to be put back on the wait list. And yeah, I probably won't have therapy for the rest of the year, which is a real shame, because I love therapy, to be honest. I know that sounds weird, but I feel like I'm kind of relying on it a little bit now, especially EMDR, because I'm actually able to process, and I think because I'm now starting to see some results in terms of like my like outbursts and my reactions and my, you know, my overall outlook on who I am. I'm starting to notice the progress, so I want to keep going. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. So yeah, it's really not ideal. Look, as a mum who, you know, and by the way, I can't drive because I'm legally blind, so I literally cannot drive. So I either have to catch public transport, or I do have to pay fuel to whoever can drive me around in my own car, because I do have a car in my name. So yeah, that's kind of the only reason why I have a car in my name, but otherwise that's it. I have to rely on public transport, and that's really, really hard. Like I said, this last year I've not called transport, and it's not because, like, especially when it comes to my daughter, like my partner's been doing a lot of the heavy lifting with taking my daughter to her appointments. That, I mean, she doesn't have as many now as she did when I was the one taking her, I will say that. Like, she has maybe once a month, whereas when I was taking her, it was like 2 to 3 times at the least. So like, I was still traveling up and down all the time. And I think since becoming a mum, it's really brought on this extra sense of just anxiety, because I'm on my own, and well, because I was on my own and parenting her on my own, because my partner worked a lot and a lot of overnights, and then even when he was home, he would sleep most of the time. So I was a solo parent, and I couldn't drive. I didn't have my car at that point, you know, so I couldn't get anybody to take me. It was just really, really tricky. So I'm still trying to work on it. I'm hoping either by the end of the year or early next year I'll be able to get on transport again, especially when it comes to, you know, my appointments and my daughter's appointments. It's obviously very, very important. I'm just very, very thankful that I have such a supportive partner, and it's also the reason why he had to quit his job, because I was having so many attacks. I was alone all the time. I was bedridden. I had a medical needs child. I could barely lift myself out of bed when I was having attacks, let alone take care of my child. So it was just a safety thing at that point. My partner and I really had a really long talk. We're like, okay, this is the best scenario that we can come up with at this point, is, you know, he quits his job and he becomes carer, because I was on carer's payment for our daughter, and then I was like, it's just mentally, physically, I just can't do it. So yeah, we made that decision, and we also ended up moving at the same time. to lower our costs because we knew our income was gonna cut by half, and it has. So that's been a whole transition, but I think since he's been home and I've been able to kind of let go of the reins a little bit and actually look after myself properly, I found a lot of really good outcomes. Hopefully that continues, and hopefully there's a time, especially when she goes to school next year because she starts kindy, I'll be able to kind of be a bit more confident because I'm able to manage my condition a little bit more easier. It's not always going to be perfect, and again, I don't know if I'm in like a plateau phase or what. If you have Meniere's disease and you've had it for a long time, let me know. It's normal to go through long periods. Like I've also gone through this once more, and this is still the longest. The previous longest was 9 months. I had 9 months of like barely any symptoms, and again, not like over a year now of barely any symptoms. So yay, that's good. But yeah, Meniere's disease is not a fun disease to have. I don't recommend it. So yeah, I think I'm gonna leave this video here. Thank you all for watching. Comment down below your experiences. Let me know what you thought, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.